Major funding for these programs is made possible by grants from Chase Commercial Term Lending and Capital One Bank, New York Community Bank, the Witkoff Group, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Jean Tomasi and Webster, Greenberg Traurig, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, Hap Investment Developers, Herrick Feinstein, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, John Katsimides, Red Apple Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, People's United Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the CUNY TV Foundation, the Continuum Company, Urban American, and these friends.
So, you get these kids who are born in Brooklyn, grow up in Hicksville, decide that maybe I want to be a physical therapist. Forget physical therapy. I want to go into business, go to Baruch, and then suddenly they learn about real estate. They don't learn about real estate. They become the CEO of the largest publicly traded office owner in the country, in the world, Brookfield Properties. Brookfield Financial, but Brookfield Office Properties. I'm happy to have Dennis Friedrich, who is the CEO. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show, Mike.
So tell me about, your grandparents. You said to me that your father's father he was in the utilities in Germany?
Yeah, he was the regional head of the telephone company, had a big position, also had 11 kids.
And because of the fact that he was the head of the regional head of the utility company and the 11 kids, that helped him from staying in the army during the war.
Staying out of the army, yeah.
Right.
He was registered, but at that point in Germany, if you had a certain number of kids and if you had a key role in the infrastructure, they...
Now, where'd they live in Germany at this time?
In a town called Heilbronn, which is a couple of hours from Frankfurt, so in the southern part of Germany. Nice area.
And what about your mother's side?
My mother's side lived up north, outside of Bremen.
And you said they really had it difficult during the war, your mother's side.
Yeah, both sides did, but my mother's side in particular, because she lived close to where a lot of the shipbuilding took place, a lot of the production of the warships and other areas, so they were consistently bombed, and it really took its toll on the family. My mother actually had to, at one point, be sent out to the farm country because she was malnourished. There wasn't a lot of food in the area because of the consistent bombing. So her mother pushed her out to some relatives along with a sister or two, and it probably saved her life at that point.
Now, what was your father doing in Germany after the war?
He didn't stay long after really school. He was in trade school. He was trained to be a shoemaker. His best friend in the area had come to the U.S. a year before. One of his, my uncle Gerhard, whose aunt was here, ended up calling him and saying, Walter, you have to come over to the States. This is great. So he came over when he was 21 years old.
So he comes over, really no true family, just Uncle Gerhard and some other people over here. And where did he move originally? Was it Brooklyn or?
He moved into Glendale area, into Queens, Brooklyn border.
Right.
Much.
So that's and you said to me that was like 1955.
In 1955 he came over.
Okay. And your mother comes over when?
She came over later. She came over in 1961.
And so your mother came over. What was she doing at this time?
When she came over, she had actually an uncle who was set up in Forest Hills in the shipbuilding industry. Interestingly, so she came to live with them. She was doing a lot of whether it was housekeeping or different type of jobs just to make ends meet
So,
at that point.
you know, it's interesting. We were talking about this, you know, how parents meet. There were these social clubs, right? So tell me that story.
Yeah, so they when I've asked them questions, my mother unfortunately passed away a few years ago. My father, thankfully, still with us, and I asked sort of how difficult it was at that point in time for him, particularly, to come over as 21, and then how did the standard son's question, how did you meet mom? There was a real close-knit group, anywhere from Franklin Square to Ridgewood to Glendale, of a German social scene. So they met in the German social clubs, dance halls, which I think is a common theme in a lot of immigrants.
So they get married, and your sister's older?
Yeah, my sister's older, yeah.
Okay. And at this time, your father was working in the masonry business when he came over originally?
When he came over immediately, he actually, through his friend, was the aunt I mentioned was running a printing business that was actually pretty sizable, her and her husband. He spent a little time, didn't really enjoy that very much, and got into construction for a little period of time. But he aggressively pursued a couple of positions with bigger companies, and he landed a spot with Shell Oil at that point in time, which was out of Greenpoint. And he spent 35 years there, driving an oil truck all around Manhattan, Staten Island.
Which was very interesting because later on in life, it gives you, and he was like the tour guide we were joking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened? The relatives and the others, I mean, he had 13, he was one of 13.
He was one of 11. My mother was
one
one
of 8.
One of 8. And we had a consistent flow of German tourists to our household.
You were what we would call that, was it the unofficial Airbnb at that time?
Yeah, exactly. They were a little ahead of their time. So I remember even from early days spending a lot of time sleeping in a different room because I was displaced from my room because relatives would come over. And it was good. It was exciting. But
this way you were able to, at this time you had moved from Brooklyn to Hicksville.
To the middle of Long Island, yeah.
Okay. And so, but you were able to see the city, as you said. You gained a lot of insight. You were the tour guides for all these.
Right, tour guide, and also visiting my father's work, which is right on the other side of the river from Manhattan. So I had, and I recognized that as I was getting in my teen years that I had far more exposure. I lived a very quiet suburban life. Hicksville was the standard ride your bike on the sidewalk, play roller hockey every day type of thing. But
roller
I had
hockey,
much more.
Not ice hockey?
No, we didn't have the wherewithal to play ice hockey.
Brookfield, is Canadian, but
yeah.
That's the official sport of Brookfield. Probably.
No doubt, and the roots are there as well.
Right, but you played roller hockey.
Played roller hockey. I mean, I had a very modest upbringing. There was a major rink not far away, but playing ice hockey was a big ticket, as it is today. That's what my son spends a lot of time doing.
Were you a guard?
In hockey, I was center, actually. Yeah.
Center.
Yeah. But this was pick up roller hockey every day.
How do you get this feeling that you want to be a physical therapist?
Yeah, as I was going through high school, just looking at different interesting careers, I was into sports. It was a definitely growing profession at that point in time. It seemed like an interesting path. Ironically, it's my wife's profession. So I did, coming out of high school, I applied to a number of schools, got into Stony Brook, which had a very good program.
Now, were you living at Stony Brook?
Yes, I was in the dorms at Stony Brook, yeah.
So you're at Stony Brook, you're first year over there, and you're taking courses for physical therapy. Then how did you decide that physical therapy wasn't the key and you wanted to come into to the Big Apple? As
right.
Say?
So two things were really happening. One, I sort of realized that I wasn't a lover of science and math as much at that point, and that was a key part of the curriculum, obviously. And I took a few which you had to do to take certain courses. I took 2 economics courses, and I really, I had not had any major interest in business, and I really took to it. A few good professors, and I enjoyed
So
it.
how did you decide on Baruch?
So what happens, at the same time, I was getting a little bored from the vacuum of a campus out on Long Island. Just the campus life was fun for a year and a half, but it was starting to get a little boring for me, actually. And I had a constant draw to the city. We'd take trips back in as well from out in Stony Brook, took the 60-mile ride or so. And I did a lot of homework. I said I really wanted to be in Manhattan. At that point, you see a consistent theme. We couldn't quite afford Columbia and NYU, which is fine. And I asked a few professors out in Stony Brook, and I did homework. And Baruch just kept coming up. I had heard of CUNY before in City College, but I'd never heard of Baruch when I was in high school or when I selected Stony Brook, and I just kept hearing great things about it as a great business.
So you said to me, you come to the city, and where was your first apartment?
Right in the heart of Hell's Kitchen on 48th and 9th. It was an interesting time at that point. I was dead set on living in Manhattan. I didn't want to commute to Baruch. I did it for a little bit. And I actually befriended someone from, an Irish guy from Jersey, from the Jersey Shore, so we had a lot of Long Island versus Jersey interaction, but he became one of my best friends, and he lined up an apartment in Hell's Kitchen, which he
Yeah, you
couldn't
were saying
afford.
to me when we got together something about the YMCA, or
Yeah, and pick up basketball games. Basically, we're playing intramural basketball, and he was commuting as well. He was on the same path, different interests, but did not want to commute back and forth. And he lined up this hellhole of an apartment in Hell's Kitchen, an old tenement apartment.
you know, today that apartment is, you know, it's a hot neighborhood, especially
No
what
doubt.
you guys are doing on the west side.
No doubt. I just drove by recently, renovating the building we were in, but it was interesting times. They all, my roommate at that time, Jim McCann, who was the Irishman from Jersey Shore. We were both big guys, and the entire neighborhood was a heavy drug dealing neighborhood, but they all thought we were undercover cops. So they all knew our names and would wave and laugh and say, you know, go on to work. Sure, you guys are students, and
Now,
we
one of
never
the-
had one issue.
One of the
ever.
great things about Baruch is that you had really great opportunities to do internships and jobs, right?
Yeah, it was a real.
So tell me about some of those jobs.
So I mean, I love that aspect of Baruch because it was in the city. So I did a number of them. Did about 3. Bates Advertising, crunching numbers, big firm. Not the best experience. I don't know. I lost track of what they ultimately rolled into. And then I did an internship with a firm down the block, a small firm, which had about 20 very, very smart guys from Ivy League schools that were doing geopolitical, macroeconomic reports for major oil companies, major Fortune 500 companies, and work for a firm called O&Y. So they would basically publish research and information for business decision makers.
Now, you were working for O&Y during school?
No, I ended up working at this firm called Multinational Strategies, and then I was interviewing for different jobs, and this opportunity came out of that. The internship was burning off,
Okay.
and it was time to go out and get a job.
So the internship, and this is when you're graduating?
This is on graduation, yeah, exactly.
Okay. When did you graduate?
1987.
So it's 1987, one of the other recessions that we had at that time.
right.
A little difficult, and you're at the multi-strategies company.
Right.
And there's this company called Olympia in New York, the Reichman family, right?
Right, right.
You know, very hardworking individuals who had the foresight, as one would say, saying, you know, there's dirt from the World Trade Center, and we're going to make that landfill Battery Park
Right.
Place. And so, what do you get a job at Olympia in New York? Which
Sure. So interestingly, on that note, Michael, a time when while I was there and in hearing the stories that there were very few other New York families because it was a difficult time, or other investors that were interested in that. There was minimal interest. They had exactly the vision to execute on it. So so I'm looking at a number of different opportunities. I was actually interested in product development of some sort, and some of the larger firms. I had an offer from Procter & Gamble, and I think Colgate at that
I
time.
mean, it could have been in the toothpaste business.
Right, that area. But I would have had to likely go back to school to do something interesting.
Right.
Otherwise, I was a salesman
okay,
for
in
5
Procter
years.
and Gamble, you would have maybe been in Cincinnati, you know, or
Right.
something like that.
Not Manhattan, or I would have been peddling toothpaste for a period of time to get to what I wanted to do, which was product development. And here this offer comes up for actually a ridiculous amount of money at that point. It was more than the other offers I'd have to coordinate a global symposium for the Reichmans for the opening of the financial center.
I think what really is important what was the Reichmans and what was Paul's thought at this time? I mean, because this was a time that Battery Park City was difficult. I mean, they built the buildings and it took them time to lease them up. He had this vision to run this global international conference. He was going
to bring in, again, brilliant idea, bring all the business leaders together. He had developed relationships because this was a family that the roots were a tile business out of Toronto. So they come in, they take over Manhattan real estate, became the biggest Manhattan landlord at that point in time. So let's bring everybody into the Winter Garden and we'll have this major symposium of all the CEOs around the world. So they hired me and a few other people, but I was a prime coordinator on it. And at the end of the day, it was a failure. What happened was Paul at that point, although his status was elevating, really didn't yet have the stature to pull in. They could put on the Canadian CEOs, couldn't pull in all the global CEOs. So the projected attendance was less than perfect. So they pulled the plug on it. So
what do you do now? I mean, your project's over, baby.
Right, exactly. So I'm back out on the Hell's Kitchen streets. But what I had I guess the lucky position is sitting next to the leasing and finance group and some of the guys that I actually work with today. And at that point in time, ONY was an incredibly exciting place to be. I mean, they were about to open up the World Financial Center, thinking about London, more than thinking, jumping on the London opportunity, Canary Wharf. And vibrant, deal making, a lot going on. And I said, I just got more and more interested. Two things, love Manhattan, learning more and more about Manhattan at that point in time, and really started thinking about real estate more and more. It was the environment, and the financial center was a great project, and I was just associated with it, and I started to just network.
So you transitioned to what role at ONY?
I went into a combination of initially a finance role and then a leasing role, but I worked very hard to network while I was there. Made a couple of very good friends that are still my friends today and colleagues within Brookfield office properties in Brookfield, and I was offered a position with ONY just pretty much on the heels of this.
And how long do you stay at ONY now?
So I'm there for, this would have been right around, 87, 88 on graduation. I stayed for 5 years, and the firm, as was well reported, ends up falling into bankruptcy. The Reichmans probably could arguably be the greatest developers of all time. Took a lot of financial risk, unfortunately, and took a lot of the fortunes from the New York portfolio and made a big bet in London, in Canary Wharf, and it ultimately, when the markets dried up, backfired on it.
So the kid now has to find a job.
Now I have to, yes, again, we've got to go out. A great time of experience. I mean, 5 years of really getting to know a lot of the New York real estate community around some really brilliant people, particularly financing, from the finance side. The ONY was very sophisticated culture at that point in time. So some of the gentleman I was reporting to lined up a position for most of the young guys. I was a young guy at that point in time, needed to really go out. We were out of business. We really couldn't do transactions. It all was running through the bankruptcy court, and lines up a position for me with Jones Lang Wooten, which was a
London-based company.
London-based, very large real estate brokerage advisory company, smaller in the States, very large in the UK and Asia and other areas.
And your role at Jones Lang Wooten?
It was Jones Lang Wooten at that time. Yeah.
And you're doing what now?
So I ended up, one thing that was sort of happening to me, I think, at ONY, and it's still in my blood to a certain extent. I like to do a lot of different things. I was never one that wanted to be put in one silo. I enjoy a lot of different type of activities. So I joined a group which was called the Corporate Advisory Group, was advising corporate America on their real estate in a very broad-based way. So
right.
Headquarters, leasing, appraisal, sales, building sales, disposition.
Right, determination of what and you did. You worked on Time Warner, I think.
That was one of my biggest accounts. Time Warner, I was in essence running Now West real estate for a period of time. They had outsourced it, the U.S. real estate. So I was doing everything from Time Warner's corporate aviation hangar, where they were flying all the movie stars and rock stars in and out. They wanted to restructure that transaction there, to one of my early, I'm a big music fan, and one of my favorite assignments where we had to move the famous Atlantic Records post-production studios somewhere from Broadway, where the facility just couldn't really handle what they wanted to do, and we did it over to the far west side, but I was able to look at the shelves and see the original Led Zeppelin tapes and
So you felt
Stones tapes, so I felt good, so it was a lot of fun.
And you're there for how long, Jonathan?
I was there from 2000 to, from 92 to 2000, so almost 8 years.
Okay, it's 2000, and then you call up a buddy of yours who you work with going back at Olympia in New York, which now became Brookfield.
Right.
And what happens? You call, who do you call?
So I call Rick Clark, who's a friend and former colleague and one of my best friends, and he had elevated there. He's one of the few made the O&Y to Brookfield transition. He was a little more experienced, and he was heading the U.S. operations that I call. And they had just really worked themselves out of the bankruptcy, but had a new sponsor in Brookfield, a Toronto-based company. And I said, Rick, I'm really getting the itch to go back onto the landlord side. I really want to get behind something and build a platform.
I don't want to be in leasing corporate structure.
I want to move on. It was great. It was a good time. It was time to move on. And I think it's a great business, but I really wanted to be a little more behind the decision-making, be behind a platform, and really like the landlord side. And even when I was advising or getting involved in transactions, was becoming more and more naturally drawn. So I called Rick and said, Rick, I'm not going to ask you for a position, but I'm going to ask you to help me a little bit, maybe talk to John Zuccotti, who was chairman with great connections. And he says, yeah, sure. It doesn't really get back to me for a while. And a few positions are starting to open up that I'm thinking about, and I call him and ask him, what's going on here? Why are you not getting back to me? He said, I talked it over with a few people, including John Zuccotti and others, and we're about to go back into growth mode. And a lot of what you want to do and what your skill sets you develop is kind of what we need. So would you come back to now Brookfield, but would you rejoin the band, I guess, so to speak? And sat down, got to kind of relearn what they were going through, and made that decision in 2000 to go back.
What do you go back as?
So I go back as basically the head of the growth initiatives. So really acquisitions, and this is the first time, at least in the U.S. after the restructuring, that the new Brookfield is ready to go into restructuring the growth mode.
Now, at this time, how big was Brookfield? I mean, on ownership in American property?
Yeah, it would have been probably at that point sub 20 million square feet. Really had been on the sidelines for a period of time through a difficult restructuring.
Right, and most of the New York City holdings were the World Financial Center.
World Financial Center, 245 Park. A few of they held on, and again, the sponsorship from Brookfield out of Canada, some very, very smart individuals really helped rework that. Had nice sponsorship, and it was time to get back into let's grow this platform again. So my first assignment coming back was actually to lead the team on the pursuit of the trade center, which Brookfield was in the midst.
Right, that was interesting. You were pursuing it, and who were you going to partner up with on that deal?
So in the 11th hour, we're with capital partners, Deutsche Bank, CIBC. Good. I think we knew downtown certainly from the financial center and One Liberty. 11th hour, we elect to team up with Boston Properties and Blackstone. So we have this amazing consortium, so to speak, of investors, which probably complicated things up to an extent, but it was a powerful team, and we came in second. And
you didn't realize that little guy over there, Larry would get it done.
Mr. Silverstein, I think a number of people took him a little lightly in that mix, although he obviously had the experience with 7 World Trade Center, but he tenaciously, as Larry does, pursued it and won out at the end of the day.
Right. But then, September 11th was an eventful day for you because you worked downtown.
I worked downtown. I mean, really two reasons. Within a year of being at Brookfield, Rick Clark, who was head of U.S., actually gets elevated up. So I became chief operating officer. So from sort of a growth acquisition mode, coming out of the trade center experience, sort of fall into running operations day to day in the summer of 2001. So obviously a very big event for all of us, but a particularly impactful event for.
So tell me what happened. I mean, you were sitting at your desk and you heard this thump.
No, actually, I drove, parked my car in the World Financial Center, walked across Liberty Street just a few minutes before the first plane went in. I was in the elevator in One Liberty, so I didn't have any idea that anything had happened at all. And I get up out of the elevator and go to walk into my office, which was actually facing the the World Trade Center side, and I see all paper flying down, and I noticed folks were a little bit on edge, and my first, as ridiculous as it sounds, I'm thinking, One Liberty was always where we viewed ticker tape parades, so I think this can't be a ticker tape parade.
Right, it wasn't the Yankees.
It wasn't the Yankees, there wasn't anything going on at that point in time, and then I got a sense there was greater panic in the office, and I was right next to the second impact. Really, my office was overlooking the South Tower, so that was very, very.
You said to me you were fortunate. You got out of the building and you walked up to the Upper East Side.
We walked up eventually up to Midtown to our office there. So I was fortunate to get out. We did evacuate the buildings at that time. We were very fortunate as a firm not to lose one employee, which was amazing considering our concentration of ownership and we could have been in the restaurants or anything along that situation. So
from the COO, when did you become the CEO of Brookfield Office?
So I became CEO of the U.S. operation for over a 5-year time frame or so. And then in July of 2012, I was named the global CEO of the Office platform, which I am today.
And you're rather active these days, you guys. I mean, downtown you acquired 9X, the Mercantile building, during the period of time. Also, after 9/11, you acquired the other financial building.
The former Lehman Interest.
Former Lehman Interest over there. And, you know, it's been a good time. And now you have the Hudson Yards. I mean, you have the far west side, your properties over there. And you're growing by leaps and bounds, as one would say.
Yeah, we've been fortunate to we weathered the financial crisis, I'd say, very well. We kept our nose clean. We didn't get into too many. We had a few complex deals. We had acquired Trizac Properties in 2006, which really was the big linchpin deal for us. It took us from, we had already in Canada material presence, a growing presence in the States, but pretty much a New York, Boston firm. Trizac really rolled us out as a national firm, acquired a big portfolio in Washington, D.C., Houston.
And also, you got some properties, additional properties in New York.
Exactly. So we really, including the Grace Building and One New York Plaza, and then we had to work our way through some of the refinancing of that. But we were very opportunistic during the financial workout. So we've today are operating across 7 major economies. Hope that to grow. Big player in the U.S. That's continues to be a big part of our business.
Tell me a little bit about the family. Your mother passed on, but your dad's living where today?
He's still in Hicksville, still in the house that I grew up in.
Okay, and you met when you were in high school. You met this woman who was a friend who subsequently became the physical therapist. Your wife, right?
Yes, yes. So she's the success story. I went through a lot of different career paths to eventually get here. But yeah, my wife and I knew each other in high school, more casually. She was actually dating a friend of mine, and both had. I think our connection is both had a passion for Manhattan. Her mother grew up on Thompson Street in traditional Italian-American neighborhood right in the middle of Soho. And she was always also drawn to the city. She ended up moving into the city at Hunter College.
And tell me about the kids. What are their names, and what do they do?
They're great. So my eldest is a 14-year-old son named Trevor. Plays a lot of hockey. He's a lot better than I ever was. Plays a lot
roller
of
ice.
Ice. He's all ice now. Yeah. Roller seems to have lost its luster a little bit, but plays a lot of hockey and lacrosse. He's a good kid, thinking about the different schools he wants to go to now.
So that's Trevor.
And my daughter, youngest, is 9-year-old. Her name is Callie, and she's the basketball player, and she's a great little girl. So
for the kid, who grew up in Brooklyn, who didn't know really anything about the real estate business, but maybe the roots of your mother and father taking all the relatives around gave you some really idea, and now you are part of the New York City building New York, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michael.